Brownface's canon in the Cosmere and the way that I want to let out an unhinged scream from the depths of my bowels is unparalleled. He's killing the Parshendi, so like, honor only applies to which side of the genocide you're on? Excuse me?
Since this is a series that's story arc is based on genocide, prejudice, and metaphors for racism, I don't feel like I'm hearing a lot of constructive feedback on that. So here I am, doing the work.
It could change the world. I'm legal.
Hello friends of the internet, welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph. This is a Words of Radiance reading vlog. This is part of an ongoing series in which I'm rereading the Stormlight Archive because I have things that I need to get off of my chest. Now, I'm going to be prefacing this video the same way that I'm going to be prefacing all of the other videos in the series, which is that if you are a fan of the Stormlight Archive and you do not like hearing someone talk negatively about your favorite books, I highly suggest that you don't watch these videos. The reason that I'm doing this is because it is a catharsis for myself as someone who was previously a Brandon Sanderson fan, read multiple of his books. There's at least like 15 videos out there of me gushing about these books the first time that I read them. So the 5 videos that I'm making in regards to rereading each book in the series as we lead up to the 5th book release at the end of 2024 is like not compared to everything positive that I've already said. So this is me setting the record straight, mostly for myself, honestly, because the first time I read this, I genuinely loved it. And by the time I got to book 4 in this series, I started to have some questions. There's not a lot of content that I'm seeing out there talking critically about the Stormlight Archive series. And since this is a series that's story arc is based on genocide, prejudice, and metaphors for racism, I don't feel like I'm hearing a lot of constructive feedback on that. So here I am, doing the work. I'm currently at the end of part 1, which this book is, what, 1,100 pages? So I might as well have just read the prelude, right? It's just the beginning. I'm already having some issues. Everything that I'm tabbing here is only critical thoughts about this book. Here's big issues that I'm having so far. Jasna and Shallan have a conversation on a boat. Jasna is telling Shallan that power can be an illusion. That if someone comes onto this ship and carries themselves with the air of someone who is important, speaks in a certain manner, and asserts dominance within limits of the non-existent power that this metaphorical person would have, that they would still be able to get the reaction out of people on the ship that are of a lesser class and that are the subjugated peoples, if we're going to connect this to the metaphor for racism in this book, because the people on the ship have dark eyes, whereas people who are given privilege in this world have light-colored eyes. And Jasna is making the case for perceived power, that power can shift. Shallan thinks that she does not have said power because she's a redhead, which is like really stupid, but she doesn't know that that's necessarily quote unquote true until 2 things happen. One thing is that she carries herself the way Jasna does when speaking to the captain of the ship and demands that he do something for her, and he does. So she's like, I'm going to keep this in the forefront of my mind and think maybe Jasna might have a point. Don't know if it's true yet, but I was able to exert some dominance. Like, wait, hold up, honey boo boo child, wait. Jasna is literally a princess. She has power. She can't not have power. What is she talking about? Like, if someone was to come onto this ship, we'll just stick with that as an example, and act like they have power, there are still limitations to their lie, because at the end of the day, they can't exercise privileges that they do not have, but Jasna can. And Shallan, one, being a Light Eyes person, but two, the ward of the princess, has more power than the dark-eyed people on the ship. So, like, this is not a social experiment, because there is no gauge for this with someone who doesn't have the power that they have. It's just no. Later on in the same section of the book, Shallan finds herself on a beach where she stumbles upon some slave owners who are dark-eyed people. And she thinks to herself, these people could potentially pull me into slavery, try to sell me, get a ransom, whatever. But she decides to think, I'm going to try Jasna's tactic again, commands them to follow her and help her with her luggage. And they do. And the reason that they do is, in my opinion, for the same reason that people with privilege, aka white people, are able to speak and be heard before anybody else. These slave owners know that the consequences of their actions would be either, if they want to exploit her, they're probably going to have to kill her, because if someone finds out what they did, that they're going to be killed. Or that she can turn around and say that they did something to her, and people will believe her before they believe them, because she has privilege. So when she thinks to herself, I'm thinking so scholarly, it's like, no, honey, no. You're the equivalent of a white person in this world. No, you're not. No, you don't. So that really pisses me off. In that same vein, all right, even if you disagree with everything that I've said up until this point, that's fine. Because Jasna, on multiple occasions, finds herself thinking about the Parshendi drums. The Parshendi are the indigenous people of this planet that we're on. And she thinks to herself, oh my goodness, their music is just so complex. I didn't think that a group of people could make such complex music. Maybe they're more sentient than we thought that they were. Maybe they actually have like culture. And then she catches herself and says, Jasna, you're thinking like such a scholar. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? That is like disgusting. That is not credible. That doesn't make you a good person. Just because you're thinking that, oh my gosh, these people who were enslaved and considered savages have art. My God, kudos to me for figuring out that they might just actually be people. Hello, this pisses me off. I'm like, you know what? You guys can love her, but I can't stand her. It's disgusting. And she's kind of rubbing off that mentality onto Shallan. I can't stand it. Can't stand it. Moving over to Moash real quick. Moash is my favorite character so far. Yes, I've read the entire series, and I know what happens later. So Moash, it's like every time Brandon Sanderson gets close to having a constructive conversation about the metaphors that he's making here, it just completely misses the point, because it's being written from the frame of the oppressor trying to unpack the oppression, but not knowing what to do with it. And it's pissing me off. It's pissing me off. I could see the notes that I made in here the first time I read this, and I just wish I said it with my chest, but now I am. Now I am. For example, Kaladin, Moash, and crew are all dark eyes, previously enslaved men, who are now captain and crew. So they've got a little bit of power, but everyone else is a Light Eyes, who is also a soldier of equal rank. So they find themselves in a predicament where some soldiers are about to instigate an argument with Kaladin and crew. And Moash's response is, oh yeah, you want to antagonize us? We'll just let's go, let's roll. And Kaladin says no. Right? And when Kaladin says no, my thought of what I wanted to happen was that Kaladin says no and acknowledges that these light-eyed soldiers have more privilege than the dark-eyed people, and therefore that fight would not be a fair fight because no matter what happens, they would be in the wrong, even if they were defending themselves. But no, it's not. It's two things happen here. One, that Kaladin says to Moash, no, we are better than that. This is not what real soldiers are. It's like, wait, hold on, honey, hold on. Those people who antagonized you were real soldiers. They've been real soldiers from the jump. Everyone who's been doing all of these racist, prejudice, atrocities, genocides have been real soldiers. So let's not sit here and pretend that the handbook of what an actual soldier is, I'm not talking about the Way of Kings, because we'll get to that eventually, is like written. Bunch of baloney. And Moash turns around and says, like, eventually he's like, yeah, you're right, we can be better than that. And Syl, like, nods in a kind of disappointment, and Moash saying, like, what's his problem, right? But Syl is supposed to be an honor spren, which is like the voice of this like universal honor, this universal kind of truth. And it's like, if the people are not acknowledging the issue and the universal symbol of truth is not acknowledging the issue, what are we doing, my guy? What are we doing? So those are my thoughts on part 1 so far. This is probably going to be a long video because I'm only 170 pages in, roughly. And I've been talking at my camera for 10 minutes. Buckle up, this is going to be a ride.
Brown faces canon and Cosmere in the way that I want to let out an unhinged scream from the depths of my bowels is unparalleled. I am currently halfway done. Every single tab here, every tab, each of these tabs is something that I have an issue with or find an inconsistency with, and I'm coming with receipts. Let me read you some sections, okay? Let me read you some sections. First off, let me read you a memory that Shallan has about Jasna. Something that Jasna said to her and that Shallan took to heart. Using a fetching face to make men buy you something is no different from a man using muscle to force someone to do the same. She'd said, both methods are base, and both will fail a person as they age. Let's be very clear. A woman choosing to wear makeup is not the same as a man physically forcing a woman to do something for him. One is abuse and the other isn't. Let's be so clear. Like, the way that power imbalances are structured in this book, I have a serious issue with. And I don't understand how this is like a throwaway sentence. It wasn't necessary. Like, we could have had our characters go through the same situations of figuring out power imbalances and finding their own voice without shaming women. We really didn't have to do that, okay? Now, I'm going to read you a passage so we can understand why brownface is canon in the Cosmere and used in other situations. So, to break it down for you, Shallan is pale-skinned, red hair, blue eyes, which in our real world would make her a white woman. But canonically, because she has light eyes, she is of the upper class, and she is also potentially going to be betrothed to one of the princes, so she could be the queen in the future. So, like, canonically, she's the equivalent of a white person, because this entire thing is a metaphor for race, right? Shalon is talking to another character named Tin, all right? Tin is like a bandit lady thing. "But my eyes are light blue," Shalon said. "I'll never pass for lowly, no matter what my voice sounds like." Tin fished in her trouser pocket. She had slung her coat over another peg, and so wore only the pale tan trousers, tight with high boots, and a buttoned shirt, almost a worker's shirt, though of nicer material. "Here," Tin said, tossing something to her. Shalon barely caught it. She blushed at her clumsiness and then held it up towards the sun, a small vial with some dark liquid inside. "Eye drops," Tin said. "They'll darken your eyes for a few hours." "Really?" Shalon says. "Not hard to find if you have the right connections. Useful stuff." Shalon lowered the vial, suddenly feeling a chill. "Is there the reverse?" Tin cuts in. "Something to turn a dark eyes into a light eyes?" "Not that I know of, unless you believe the stories about the shard blades." "Makes sense," Shalon said, relaxing. "You can darken glass by painting it, but I don't think you can lighten it without melting down the whole thing anyway." And then they move on to talking about accents and other things. So basically, Tin just gave Shalon a material that is going to turn her into a low-class person, the lowest class of society, someone with a darker physical marker. And her first thought is, but can the brown people pretend to be us? And when she's like, oh no, they actually have to earn it. They actually have to earn it by like getting a shard blade, which is like really hard to do because only like the princes have them, and like only like people who have access to wealth have them. So like, I don't have to worry about that. Girl, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with this? Like, how is this a main character that we're supposed to root for? It's supposed to like save the world? Hello. Okay, now I'm going to follow that up with another situation in which she actually uses that vial later on. So Shalon has to sneak out at night, all right? She decides to use the vial. And she says, and I quote, these are her thoughts: "The war camps were still busy despite the hour, and almost nobody paid attention to her. For once, she didn't feel conspicuous. Even in Carbaranth, which is like the city where she met Jasna, people had glanced at her, noticed her, considered her. Some had thought of robbing her, others of how to use her. A young light eyes without proper escort was distinctive and possibly an opportunity. However, while wearing straight dark hair and dark brown eyes, she might as well have been invisible, and it was wonderful." I hate her so much. First of all, she does not know if what other people were thinking. She clearly doesn't. Just because she had that scene in book 1 where Jasna purposefully put herself in a dangerous place, dressed as someone who has something that the people around her desperately need, like wealth, in order to provoke them to attack her and justify killing them, does not mean that when Shalon is just walking around, that every single person who is not a light eyes person, or in this case like a white person, is out to kill her. What is this? What is this, like, subtle racism? It's really weird. I don't like it. It's ucky. Oh my god, I feel so safe because I blend in with the brown people. Like, what? Are you kidding me right now? Like, literally on the next page, we see her really sucking at wearing her brown face because she immediately does something which the person who she's trying to barter with thinks that she's like of an upper echelon of society, like she's of a higher class anyway because of the way she's acting. So like, honey, what? Ew, it's just ew. Another thing that I'm struggling to wrap my head around is why Cal so desperately wants Dalinar to be the epitome of these metaphorical white people. I don't understand. Dalinar is the uncle of the king, who's basically kind of just running everything right now because he's got so much pull, right? And he gets into a conversation with Syl, who's his honor friend, his honor fairy thing, whatever. And she keeps insisting that Dalinar is a good person. But the moment that Kaladin thinks that he wants to kill the Light Eyes person who, like, killed his brother and all this other shit, she's like, no, don't do that. But Dalinar's killing all day, every day. People are dying under his command. He's killing the Parshendi. So, like, honor only applies to which side of the genocide you're on? Excuse me? No. I do not like Dalinar. I do not think he's honorable. I think he's an opportunist. There's even a scene with Shallan where she's meeting these bandits or whatever, these assassins, and they try to buy her, and she says, no, well, if you try to buy me, then how do you know someone else isn't going to buy me out too? Like, I'm not trustworthy. And someone says, honor from a thief? Like, that's not honor. That is not honor. That's called being an opportunist. Get out of my face. Like, no, absolutely not. So the way that honor is being reinforced here, I don't like. I have characters that are in a position that I think are supposed to make honorable decisions. They don't. Like, for example, when Kaladin is having a conversation with, I think it was Zigzil and someone else, and Zigzil finally asked the question, what if the assassin was actually hired by someone else and framed the Parshendi for this whole war? And Kaladin's response, instead of finding out whether that could be true, because then that means that they've been going to war with the wrong people for the wrong reasons, right? Like, to me, personally, I feel like that is a question of honorable motivations if you're protecting people or who you're killing, right? What we need to know what the point of this whole war was and if it's been approached in the wrong way. And his response is, why does that matter? But why? He moves on. Instead of like digging deeper into that, he's more interested in how the assassin got magical powers. And he's more interested in if Dalinar is an honorable person. It's just not it. I'm at home, it's Saturday, and I'm angry. Ma'am, kitty. These are my it's Saturday, I'm crusty, and I'm angry at Dalinar thoughts. I'm so angry. The live show is tomorrow, and I have like a little over 300 pages left. I guess I'll finish most of it by tomorrow morning, but that's not the point, okay? First off, I cannot get over how much Syl and Kaladin keep vouching for Dalinar, that he's a good person and he hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything that's not opportunistic. Also, he has openly admitted that he was being opportunistic when he hired Kaladin to be his captain bodyguard. Like, he openly tells Kaladin, I asked you to be my bodyguard because I needed someone who I thought would, like, essentially get the job done, and he tries to make it sound like he knows this because Kaladin's a good person, but, like, that's not really why he did it, right? Oh, God, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Okay, so the scene where Kaladin tries to claim his boon after helping Adolin win the gladiator shard plate jousting match, whatever thing. In that moment, Dalinar essentially could have vouched for Kaladin. He could have vouched more for Kaladin. Like, yes, he stopped Elokar from executing Kaladin, but sir, you still did not publicly stand up for him when you have a lot more power than you're executing when it comes to Kaladin, but you are executing for other things that you personally want done, right? And so Kaladin is mad at Dalinar at first, and Syl is like, but you shouldn't be mad at him, he's just doing his best. And everyone's like, he's just doing his best. But like, when Dalinar explains the whole Roshon incident that ultimately led to Tian's death and explains what happened with Moash's parents, Kaladin actually thinks to himself, Dalinar's still a good man. Like, this man who has all this power and can use it to change the dynamic of what is happening with the Dark Eyes is not using it for that reason. He's only using it to be able to push along his political agenda, which is ultimately only going to benefit the Light Eyes. Because, and I quote, this is what he says to Kaladin. He says, "You are still a Dark Eyes." Kaladin says, "It shouldn't matter." Dalinar says, "Maybe it shouldn't, but it does. You want to change that? Well, you're not going to do it by screaming like a lunatic and challenging men like Amaram to duels. You'll do it by distinguishing yourself in the position I gave you. Be the kind of man that others admire, whether they be light-eyed or dark. Convince Elhokar that a Dark Eyes can lead. That will change the world." And the reason that pisses me off is because it's the equivalent of a white person telling a person of color, stop rocking the boat, because when you rock the boat, it's going to rock my boat, and I don't want my boat to be rocked. Be a part of the system and raise ranks in the ways that people of an oppressive force will be able to look at you and say, yes, you benefit us, we'll let you go to the top because you're helpful to our cause, right? Dalinar tells Kaladin to just be an exceptional Dark Eyes. Be an exceptional oppressed person and you'll win. Like, no, he won't. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. It's depending a lot on people, on Kaladin garnering sympathy when it's like the system is fucked to begin with, right? And I hate him for that. I hate Dalinar for that. And what I hate even more is that directly after Dalinar leaves that conversation, Kaladin's like, he's just trying his best. Really, it's Elhokar that needs to die. I cannot stand it. And I do not like the way that Moash is being framed as like, if he goes through with this assassination of the king, that he's wrong. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I am team Moash right now. I am team Moash. He has been wronged. He has every reason to hate the Light Eyes. He has every reason to hate the system and want to just like reset the system. And Kaladin's like, no. Man, like, I don't understand why Kaladin so desperately wants Dalinar to be a good master, like a good person in extreme power, a good oppressor. What? Why? Why does it matter? Down with the system. Anarchy. I don't understand. It making me so angry. Okay. Also, another thing that I haven't really talked about too much, there is a scene with a person whose name I can't remember because I'm bad at names. Ryzen, whatever. Anyway, it's in an interlude. They meet a person who is called a king. This character notes that that king has breasts, and then someone says like, "Oh, king's gender doesn't matter here," and the person's like, "Oh, well, technically gender isn't the title of king, but like whatever." So okay, transphobic much, but what gets me even more is that in another chapter with another character, Shallan, who I cannot stand, says to herself when she's going to meet Adeline on a date, "Oh, I could put on makeup, but putting on makeup is lies. Putting on makeup is not really like being my most genuine self, so I won't do that." Wearing makeup, for the second time I'm saying this in this video, wearing makeup does not make you a liar. Wearing makeup is not forcing anybody else to do anything for you and is not leading anybody into temptation. Wearing makeup is a personal choice and a personal expression. Because people choose to wear makeup and people choose to dress themselves and present themselves in a way that makes them comfortable with their own bodies and has like nothing to do with anybody else, honestly. Like, doing that is not going to persuade anybody else of anything. That's assuming that when someone presents themselves in a certain way, goes back to that conversation of power, that if someone wears makeup, that they have power to convince somebody else of something else. Stupid. It's stupid. It's not that kind of power. That is not how power works. I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated. And I'm so sick of Shallan's xenophobic comments, because when Parshendi slaves die, she thinks to herself, like, do I really care if they died? Because they're like the enemy anyway. They're probably going to be Voidbringers. But like, she doesn't know that.
She doesn't know that, but she feels something for the humans that die, the ones that are similar to her. But if anybody else dies, she's like, not really. And she has slaves that she could have freed, but she chose not to. So, like, she's not a good person either. Kaladin is all over Dalinar, and Syl is all over Dalinar for what seems to me like no reason, because I personally can't find one. And yeah, I hate everybody. That's where I'm at.
I finished this a week ago. A week ago, I was on my friend Scylla's channel, and we had a 4-hour book review for this. 4 hours, and we could have kept going, but we had to stop because we were exhausted. I've been putting off talking about this because it kind of just makes my head hurt, and I feel a little angry at the things that happen, because when I was 3/4 of the way through, I thought there can't be more that I'm going to cringe at. That's going to make me really unsettled and uncomfortable. And unfortunately there was. It just kind of got worse. So I'm only going to talk about the big things here that we did kind of cover in depth in that 4-hour video. So like, if you want 4 hours of us discussing the things that really made us uncomfortable with Words of Radiance, I will leave the link for you to go watch that video on Zilla's channel. And I'll drop it in the description. But here's the things that made me really uncomfortable, okay? I'm gonna start off with the chasm scene. The chasm scene was the scene in which Shallan and Kaladin were in a chasm in the Shattered Plains trying to get out. It's like a maze in the middle of the desert, right? What I didn't like about this scene specifically was the way that Shallan talked to Kaladin and the way that she ended that whole scene on the moral high ground after making comments that seemed racist in tonality. For example, she's talking to Kaladin and just kind of like gabbing at him, asking him, why aren't you so happy, and like, why do you have a chip on your shoulder? Why do you talk to everybody the way that you do? It's not other people's fault that like you had a rough life. And then he goes, well, you're a light-eyed person. Essentially he's saying that like she's privileged and that her people have subjugated his people that look like him, so like he doesn't need to be nice to her. And she's like, yeah, but I've never personally done anything to you. And he goes like, I just don't want to talk to you. I have no reason to believe that you're any different from anybody else, right? And she's like, oh, well, that's not fair. Like, you don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've actually been through. And the conversation then turns into, eventually, her making it clear that, yes, she has been through hard times. Like, she doesn't say specifically what she went through, even though Kaladin does ultimately end up opening up to her that everything that's happened to him since he was enslaved and used and sold and sent to die in the battlefield, chattel slavery, like, all that stuff. And when Kaladin realizes that she has also been through hard times, he starts to change his view on her and say, oh my gosh, like, she's actually beautiful. How can you be so broken and so beautiful and so happy? And so she is beautiful because she is happy despite the things that she's been through. But I feel like we're comparing apples and oranges. Yes, Shallan has been through some stuff, but she was never a slave. She was never sent on the front lines to die. She will never have experienced the oppression that Kaladin has experienced. And for this whole scene to be framed in a way where someone who is privileged, someone who gets to say in a previous chapter, do I feel like committing genocide today? Like, if you get to say that sentence, the amount of power that your words have, right? The amount of power that your words have to, if she ever wanted to open her mouth and say that Kaladin did something to her, she could, because she's a light-eyed person. She has power. She's connected to the throne. Her power is not an illusion, despite what I feel like this book wants us to think. Despite what arguments have been made from Shallan's POV and from Jasna's conversations with her
and reinforced through patterns saying that like metaphors are lies, she's gotten to do everything that she's done because she is a light-eyed person. Point blank, period. And the way that she presents into the world comes with privilege. The people who talk to her have repercussions based on how they treat her and depending on how she reports them, right? So to have this dark-eyed man who has been oppressed in systems that she herself uses, such as slavery, because she has slaves, and for her to be the way that he has a paradigm shift about the people who oppress him, just because she's like, I've been through shit too, that doesn't sit right with me. That doesn't sit right with me. I don't like the way that that was framed. That seems completely like she is being tone deaf to his situation. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's lacking all sense of nuance for me. And especially that in this same scene, she makes a joke, quote unquote joke. I understand that this scene was supposed to be like for levity or something, where Shallan's jokingly says to Kaladin, hey, I'm getting tired, like, can't you just carry me or something and I'll find a reed and whip you? And he goes, you're so strange. There's two things wrong there. The equivalent of a white person, a person with power, with lighter features, with wealth, person who owns slaves, makes a joke to a darker featured previous slave person. Haha, I want to whip you. And he's like, stop. That's not funny. That is not a funny joke. And I don't even think his reaction is written in a way where it's like as serious as it should be. Because if this was any other situation, right? This fantasy story is drawing metaphors and parallels to real life. If this was a real person talking to someone else who they were oppressing, because she is a part of the system, I don't think that that reaction would be the same. I don't think that reaction would be the same. It leaves this icky feeling in my mouth, and I don't like it. So Kaladin leaves there, coming to respect Shallan. I guess Shallan kind of likes him, but like she doesn't really have any further paradigm shift as to like what Kaladin has been through. So she just kind of leaves on the up and up. And then later on, what happens is that Moash ends up getting sharp blade or shard plate, whichever. His eyes do transform. He turns into a light person. And so immediately we find from his friends, oh, where's Moash? Oh, well, he's getting like a new place to live and all the amenities that come with being a light-eyed person. Right, because the system benefits based on feature. Because it's a metaphor for racism, right? So he's moving forward. He has left his friends behind because, as is established as a necessity, he cannot live like a oppressed person anymore because he's light. And then Kaladin later gets light blue eyes. So he's like more improved. He is of a higher rank than Moash, essentially, because which doesn't really like, I don't know, I'm wrapping my head around this because Kaladin has darker eyes. Kaladin is in book as having dark brown eyes. Moash goes from dark brown to light brown. Kaladin goes from dark brown to light blue. So he's higher in non or higher in rank, which kind of like, if for me, felt like it was framed to justify everything that he has done up until this point. So thinking back to that system that Dalinar told him, like, hey, raise your ranks in a way that's going to validate the system and also make light people think that you're valuable. Well, he's done it. He has become the exceptional brown person. to the point where he is now equivalent to a light person, that he has the power to oppress. And I don't know that Brandon Sanderson is going to handle that with the nuance that it deserves. Because everything that I've had a problem with in this book is still a problem. Everything that I had a problem with in book 1 is still a problem. So I will be keeping an eye out for those things in book 3 and 4 and eventually 5. And once I'm done with the series, I'm never picking it up again. But all these tabs here are tabs of just me going, not okay. There are other series and other authors who talk about metaphors for oppressive systems with a lot more nuance. And I don't think this is it. I really have to take the time to put my thoughts together for this because this book has me feeling some kind of way. Hope that I've been able to articulate myself, because part of me really wants to scream. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I don't know when I'm posting this video, but I need a break from Brandon Sanderson. So I'm gonna go read something that brings me more joy, and I'll be back in like 2 months with Springer thoughts. Anyway, I post videos whenever I feel like it. Thanks for watching. Bye.
On we go.
What's it making, Mr. Wonka? Mr. Wonka worked the factory.
In your wildest,